The Apostle Paul wrote his letter to the Ephesians while under house arrest in Rome. Within its 6 chapters are 6 verses. And within those 6 verses, says one former CEO, are the keys to running a successful business.
Walt Pilcher, a former apparel company CEO, says you can increase the effectiveness and efficiency of an organization by using the biblical model for leadership to build a faster and stronger company. In his book, The Five-Fold Effect, Walt will show you how to take your company to the next level.
Walt Pilcher is also a former trustee with Regent University and is now the author of The Five-Fold Effect, a wonderful book that he's written. Walt, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
This whole concept is developed around the five-fold gifts from Ephesians 4:11 through 16. What does it say?
Well, Ephesians 4:11 through 16 says that the Lord gave some to be apostles, prophets, some to be pastors, teachers, and evangelists for the purpose of equipping the saints, which is us as Christians, to do the work of the ministry. We think of church leaders as being the ones who have to do the work, but really it's their responsibility to train the rest of us to do that. And the purpose of all that is so that whatever the organization is can achieve the destiny that God has for it, whether it's a church body, all of Christianity, or your organization or committee or whatever you're working
So
on.
does everybody have one of those gifts?
Everybody probably has more than one. You may have one that's more in evidence than the others.
The primary
Yeah.
gift evidence. So we've got apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and
teachers.
teachers. So how are these roles paralleled in the business world?
Well, you might have a CEO of a company might be apostolic. In fact, one of the things that got me started on this was reading a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And in it, he studied 28 companies, 11 of which really far outperformed their peers. And the central question was, what did those 11 companies have in common that distinguished them from the companies that weren't great? Now, the companies that weren't great were good, but they weren't great. And what it was the characteristics of their CEOs. They were father figures. They were very ambitious, but for the company, not for themselves. They were interested in having other people succeed. They cast vision. They set the tone, and they led by inspiration and example, and not by fear or by rank or anything like that, unlike domineering CEOs that we hear so much about in other companies. And Jesus said to his disciples, the Gentile leaders lord it over their people. Not so with you. And that's where we get the concept of servant leadership. And
so
that's
those are some of the attributes or characteristics of an apostle. But talk about the other 4 and some of the characteristics we might see in them.
Well, a prophetic person, I mean, we don't want to think in terms too much of Old Testament prophets, but in the New Testament, where we have the Holy Spirit in us, we can hear from God. Paul says you can all prophesy. In fact, he says that's what we should be desiring. But in the workplace, let's say, it may be somebody who's perceptive, who has discernment, who can kind of always seem to figure out where things are going. And you might say, gosh, Fred he knows how to read the tea leaves. It's almost like he's prophetic or something. And a pastoral person would have compassion, holding somebody's hand maybe through a rough spot in their life, or if we're making some changes in the company. People don't like change. Some people need to have a little extra help. And there are people who have that gift. Teacher is a teacher. One of the characteristics of a teacher is a seeker of truth. And so that person doesn't want to teach something if he doesn't know that that's really the truth. Which one did I leave out?
You left out teacher.
Evangelist.
No, you left out evangelist.
Evangelist might be a salesperson. Doesn't have to be, but the evangelistic personality is somebody who's always spreading the good news. Always very positive. This is good. Keep the faith. And whether he's selling what the company's doing, or maybe even talking good about the company within the company. And I say company because I'm business-oriented, but it could be a church or any organization.
But talk about that a little bit. Once you came upon the truth of all of this, and then you began to look, I'm sure, at your employees in a different way, how does one bring all these giftings together in a way that benefits the company?
Well, I think you start by thinking about this concept. You are president of your job. You may not be president of the company, but you have a job to do, and it may be the smallest job in the company. It doesn't matter. But that's your job, and for that task or that job, you are the apostle over that job. You are the one who was sent to do it, and the authority comes from Jesus. All authority comes from Jesus. So that gives you the opportunity to bring in the creativity or whatever you need to do it. And what you need to do after you've recognized who you are in that role is look around and say, well, now, where am I going to get some prophetic input? Are there somebody that I can work with, whether he's working with me or somebody outside the company that can help me? Where am I going to get the evangelistic input, or who's going to be the pastoral person who might help us get through whatever it is we're going to do? So not just the CEO evaluates that, but each of us in our roles within a company recognizing the blessing and the benefit of someone else's gifting. Exactly. Did this change the way that you managed and led and directed? Well, unfortunately for me, I was pretty much done with my business career before all this, before the Lord showed me these things. And so what I'm about is to try to show it to other people. I do have examples in my business experience where various things happened that were sort of the fivefold effect, but never saw the whole thing put together. How do we figure out which gift is ours, Walt? Because I think sometimes we're not very aware of what we're good at. We don't think about that. The first thing is to try to get some understanding of what the characteristics of those gifts are and what the roles are, which I just talked about. And on the most basic level, you can ask your spouse, you ask your friends, you know, what do you think I am? If you want to delve deeper, there's some tests you can take. In fact, there's one that Regent University has, and I think it's on a website called www.gifttest.org. And what that does is kind of show you where you are in the motivational gifts of Romans 12, I think it is. And those line up with the fivefold gifts pretty well. Well, it's all explained in a very usable way in this book. It's called The Fivefold Effect, Unlocking Power Leadership for Amazing Results in Your Organization. Available in bookstores across the country. Walt, thank you so much. Fascinating. Really fascinating.